All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Driving Employee Engagement with Yammer, SharePoint, and Stream. My name is Dan Holm.
And I'm Naomi Moneypenny, and very excited to talk with you about employee engagement. It's a subject that is near and dear to both of our hearts, and hopefully this will really help you to understand and unpack a little bit about what employee engagement means in your organization and how you can actually affect change with it with Microsoft 365 tools. Now, we know that you are all engaged employees because you are here, and it's bright and early on a Tuesday morning, and there were a lot of parties last night. Apparently, there were like 26 parties last night. So I sort of commend your attitude for being here in person, and for those who are braving it through the live stream as well. So definitely appreciate you being here. Now, as you know, employee engagement is a big area, and so we've heard a lot about it in the news of late, both from a study perspective. It may be a big issue inside of your organization as well. And one of the great numbers we have here from Gallup is this stat around globally that employee engagement is really at a low. So you've got 15% of employees who are actually engaged in their organization. And you wonder, like, what does engagement mean? Like, what does that really mean as a specific organization? And the idea around employee engagement is that you understand, you're committed to the values of your company, you understand where your role actually fits into the vision, and because of that, you actually have this connection to the company, and you feel actually, tied, whether it's to the brand, you feel loyal, but you actually feel aligned and mission, basically empowered to do the mission around your organization. And if you have that feeling, you actually go the extra mile for your company and the customers and everything else that you relate to every day. And so when you see this around best performing companies, it's really around understanding that a better employee engagement actually leads to better organizational performance. So this is something that actually impacts the bottom line of your organization. So you can see the great stat here. We've got 70% of those employees who are engaged at the best performing companies, and their operating units actually deliver 21% higher profits because of it. And so it's kind of a major kind of topic to think about, like how can me feeling committed to my vision and my job position actually make me feel more connected and therefore create actually better organizational rewards and better performances as a company. So that's really the setup to understand a little bit about what employee engagement means. Now, I know it's one of the big issues. It's like, okay, well, that's great. That sounds like a wonderful thing to put on an executive report or in a financial statement and, a great goal for our company. But let's take it down just a level to understand what does employee engagement really mean. So we've got some great case studies to talk about what that employee engagement means inside of an organization. So Rio Tinto is a great case study to really think about how they're using this. So here are people who have a first-line employee base, right? They're literally at the mine face, right? Literally at the mine face, and actually looking at how the better operational performance results from how you're connecting with employees there. So it's very hard when you're in that kind of first-line position to feel that connection to the CEO way back in corporate headquarters. So how do you make those employees feel connected? How do you make them feel as if they're engaged as part of the company and what they're doing is significant? That applies to both shift workers, information workers, knowledge workers, all of the types of workers that we have here. And so, making sure that the people feel connected to those business priorities has been a big area for Rio Tinto, and they've had amazing success really doing that and using Microsoft 365 tools to do so.
Yeah, and we've got a wonderful video to share. I apologize, we were both racing from previous meetings, so I forgot to load this, but I will load it really quickly here and share it with you, because this really tells the story about what employee engagement can mean to any company. This particular company, Royal Dutch Shell, is obviously one of the world's largest oil and gas companies, energy companies, and let's take a look.
We've made a real conscious effort to move away from mass communication and take more of a dialogue and conversational approach. That's more authentic, that's what our employees want. Shell is a global energy company with a very compelling purpose, and that is to power progress together by providing more and cleaner energy solutions. Our top priority is really to make sure that all of our employees are aligned with our strategy, and more importantly, that they understand what their unique contribution is to that strategy.
Shell has an open and transparent culture. It's collaborative, it's a lot of fun. We're creating a more social, seamless, and integrated digital experience for our employees.
Shell's forward-thinking visions is to make our whole workplace more digital, bring everyone together into a bigger digital community. Office 365 makes it really simple for employees to connect. We're using Microsoft Stream because it's really quick, simple, intuitive.
Video is an extremely important and impactful medium. Features like auto captioning would provide us a really interesting way to address accessibility.
You can upload any formats you want at any time, at any place, on any device. The video solution is strengthening our position because it helps us to be transparent.
People want to be heard. We're investing in the personal connect that we have with our employees.
The use of Yammer is really impacting our business, and it's a good tool for collaboration, knowledge sharing, and integration. People can see their Yammer feed, they can see the videos.
One of the great things about Stream is that we are incorporating it on SharePoint.
We have seen an increase of 470%. Using Yammer by Microsoft is making us more productive, and decisions can be made much quicker.
It really gives our employees an opportunity to engage in a way that they didn't before. If we can get them all pushing in the same direction, then I believe that we can really unlock additional business value across the company.
And you heard a lot of the themes that Naomi was talking about in that video. They talked about the importance of alignment, the top priority of making sure people are aligned with the company, of helping people understand what their unique contribution is, how they can move forward. Talked about openness and transparent communications. And they talked about connecting people across the organization with communities. They are doing all of this with the very tools we'll be talking about today. We heard mention of Stream, of Yammer, of SharePoint, and these are the tools that will allow us to achieve these results. So as we go through this session, we're going to look both at the business side of it, the people side of engagement, and how you can think about and talk about engagement to your leadership and to your employees. And we're going to talk about the tools and some of the easy, low-hanging fruit capabilities that have come to Office 365, particularly in recent weeks and months, that will help you accelerate employee engagement in your organization. So let's break it down just a bit. We're going to look at employee engagement in from four perspectives. First, how do you get leaders engaged? People won't have an understanding of what their unique contribution is or what the vision of the company is if leaders don't get engaged and communicate that. And how do you do that at scale? Second, we'll look at modern employee communications. How do you keep everyone up to date and informed about what's going on in the organization? How do you empower communicators everywhere in the organization to get information flowing faster, not only from the top down, but the bottom up and side to side? How do you encourage people to share what they know, to learn and to innovate? This is one of the key things that Shell is actually doing with their initiative, is really making sure that people can connect across the organization and find expertise to get questions answered, find resources. And lastly, how do you create a culture of participation and inclusion? One of the most important aspects of digital transformation, actually the most important aspect of digital transformation, isn't the technology at all, it's the people. And we'll look at some of the core things that you can do to drive a new way of thinking, working, and a new culture of work. So let's start with how we get leaders engaged. How do we empower leaders to inspire, to guide, and to align the organization? When leaders get engaged, it makes a big difference very, very quickly. And we're going to look at how, and what that means is we empowering leaders to really create an energy by connecting directly and authentically with employees, stepping out from behind the curtain, so to speak, of Oz, and connecting in a real way. And communicating clearly what the vision, the purpose, the strategy, the objectives are of the organization. Creating a sense of transparency and open dialogue between leaders and their employees to drive sustained engagement where people feel they can give input, provide feedback, ask questions about strategy, and raise concerns. And last but not least, how do you drive the kinds of results that Shell and others have talked about? How do you align people towards those common goals and shared values? So to show you some of these capabilities, we'll jump straight into a demo. Now, some of these demos we've shown in other sessions, but we're really going to pull them together into the context of engagement here and talk about some of the core pieces that you already have. You have these tools today to start driving better engagement with leaders. We'll start with a Yammer community. This particular community is a Yammer group that's designed to allow anyone to connect with leaders. And by the way, when we say leaders, our examples will talk about sort of senior leadership of the organization, but it's leaders anywhere. It can be you and your team. And Yammer's particularly good when you're talking about a more scaled piece of the organization or a community that crosses organizational boundaries. This open forum allows people to come, ask questions, raise concerns, get answers. They can share what's on their mind. They can use all of the modern social technologies, including Giphies, and express themselves in their own language. There's inline message translation. And so this fosters an ongoing, sustained dialogue between leaders and their employees. Now, every once in a while, you want to move the needle further, faster. And that's where live events really play a role. Events allow leaders to connect directly with employees and to answer questions, to discuss top of mind. They can be a real kickstart for that ongoing engagement as well, sort of take it to the next level. So about 2 months ago, we released into preview live events in Microsoft 365, an intelligent event capability that stretches across our suite and surfaces in Yammer, in Stream, and in Microsoft Teams. So here in Teams, we can see on the right rail, and I'll see if I can zoom in here to make this a little bit easier. Yeah, that's a good idea. That's way too easy. I have a touch screen. We see in the right rail that there was a meeting recently about the quadcopter safety program. So we'll jump in and take a look at that. And what we see is the new, actually, I'm going to do it when I wasn't zoomed in here.
I think the Wi-Fi's.
Come back, page. And what we see here is an events page, a new capability in Yammer, where we can host a live event and make it available on demand. People can come before the event and ask questions, engage in the conversation, and the Corp Comms team can sort of monitor and see what's on the top of people's mind. Then during the event, you can come here and watch the video and continue to engage in that conversation. So Naomi's posting a question, for example. And you can participate in the conversation, and as you scroll down the page, that video will actually follow you. There's not quite enough to follow, I guess. And will allow you to continue to stay connected and productive at the same time. There we go. And then after the event, you're able to come back to this page and see the video.
Thanks for joining me as we explore some exciting new products that will help influence.
So this video is available live or on demand. Now, after the event has happened, the recording is processed by Microsoft Stream, which applies AI to really unlock the content of the video. There's a voice-to-text engine that enables closed captions, which you're seeing right now, which make the video more accessible, which is really key, and also makes it possible for people to watch in noisy environments. The same transcript that's been generated allows me to find just the right moment that matters. So for example, I heard that there was a discussion of training in this particular video, in this particular meeting. So we can search for training and we can find a list of results. And sure enough, the first one is exactly what I'm looking for. And we can see what they were saying about new training programs to help foster this particular safety program. So we see that video from Microsoft Stream is brought into an experience in Yammer, and this is really illustrating one of the core transformations that Microsoft's gone through in the way we create our products, which is to sew them together to create new superpowers out of the best-of-class tools we have in our suite. Now, of course, this video also can be embedded and shared elsewhere. We can send a link to someone to look at it. Whatever we need to do, we've got the ability to explore that video a bit more. Anything you want to say about the video, Naomi?
Yeah, sure. So the other piece that's really interesting about looking at video, so one of the things your leaders may be concerned with, especially in this kind of town hall type of format, is oftentimes they're worried about not either seeing the reactions of what's going on or what's actually being shown to the folks that are out there. So one of the great ways to be able to do this is you can do these as highly produced events. So if you're used to a big town hall format with the production value cameras out there, you can definitely do that. But you can also just use your webcam, right? So if your leader is out on the road, is visiting a customer, or is it a different location for your business, this is a great way for them to make the other people feel involved, right? And just stream directly from their webcam too. And so you have the great choice with this idea around leadership engagement of I can do the beautiful production, or I can do a very ad hoc thing that's from the road as well. So it really helps to help people feel connected as you go. You can, of course, have multiple streams of content coming in. So if people are actually broadcasting from multiple locations, you're able to do that. And you can actually manage all of that production inside of Teams, which is helping to power that live event service under the hood. So it's a great way, again, to blend the kinds of communications that you feel comfortable with. If your leader's already happy with a big format type of event or produced event, or maybe they're more happy with just doing something on a webcam with a bunch of people behind them or a great location, you're able to do all of those different pieces. So it's a good way to really integrate the different kinds of content that you have available, and a good way to integrate all the different locations that you might want to bring in as part of your leadership engagement event. When we think about these leadership engagement events, we really want to think about them as a moment of high engagement. And I say that because we really want to think about, over time, helping to transition that conversation. As Dan was saying earlier, one of the reasons we want to have that community inside of Yammer is that people can ask questions before the event, they can ask questions during the event, and they can ask questions after the event. And we want to make sure that that conversation is what is going on. Because for true employee engagement, I need to feel that connection to the leader all the time. And when I feel that connection, then I'm much more likely as an employee to ask questions, to give ideas, to put my best foot forward at work all the time. And if I feel that that connection is being sustained, even if it's at large scale, then I really have an understanding of how my role fits in as a company and where my leader's going, and I'm much more committed to that vision over time. So that helpful nature of maybe taking from a process that you have right now, which is maybe once a month, once a quarter, you're running a town hall or all hands type of meeting, and then moving it to, I'm actually sustaining this conversation over time with questions, with answers, and I keep doing it over and over and over again, and maybe less reliance on the big produced broadcasts and more reliance on actually having authentic conversations inside of my company.
Yep, and one of the sort of technical points for those of you who are a little deeper in the technology, you can see here on the screen the conversation from that quadcopter safety program surfaces in the core executive corner group here. So even though, so you can imagine you have this wonderful community to engage with leaders, there's this event that happens on its own page with its own experience, but that conversation also becomes part of that ongoing experience in the main community to deliver exactly what Naomi was talking about. And while these live events, these live and on-demand video events are a really powerful way to engage, it's not the only way. We have a lot of other customers who engage directly in Yammer using what we call Yam Jams, which are very much like Ask Me Anythings, AMAs on Reddit, where there's at a specific time, people come together and talk about a specific topic. It may be something that the leadership wants to sort of open up for discussion and sort of communicate to and with employees, or maybe a set of questions that leadership wants to ask employees to really draw them in and get engaged. And we have some global companies who will do these Yam Jams over a 24-hour period in order to ensure that everyone across the globe is able to participate. Now, this is just one component of leadership engagement in Microsoft 365. Another core component is what we can do to create a digital presence for leadership on our intranet. SharePoint communication sites, which many of you have been to several other sessions and have seen, allow you to very easily create stunning digital employee experiences to share with a broad audience. This kind of site takes just a few seconds to create. And what this site is modeled to show is a site where leadership can connect employees with top-of-mind information. So we've got some beautiful links to key themes and objectives. And then they can express themselves on an ongoing basis using posts, which take advantage of SharePoint news capabilities, which make it super easy to create really compelling little posts. And you can think of it as sort of almost like an executive blog. And then in addition, we're able to embed that meeting, the recording from the previous monthly meeting here. So we've got, people can come here and view it. We have links to important resources on the right. And further down, we are actually bringing in the conversation from that same Yammer group into this leadership site. using the new Yammer Conversations web part, which will ship early next year. And this allows people to have a fully interactive experience, a full Yammer feed, so to speak. They can like, they can reply, they can post, and they don't have to go to a separate location for that. So you've got a whole spectrum of possibilities. You could turn on a simple Yammer group and start engaging within conversation and having Ask Me Anythings. You can go to live events and have these moments of high engagement with video. You can take it even further and create a curated experience for leadership to connect and communicate. There's quite a broad set of capabilities there. And then the last thing we wanted to point out is what you do in organizations that have a team of people driving these kinds of engagements. You can imagine you might have an executive communications team at Microsoft who handles these kinds of engagements for our leadership team. And the way they can operate as a team is within Microsoft Teams. They can plan the event, they can figure out what the editorial calendar and agenda is, they can track tasks, and they can do all the work they need to do to produce the event. But thanks to the new Yammer tab in Teams, which we also announced earlier this week and will also ship early next year, they can actually tap into that executive, what we're calling Executive Corner, tap into that leadership community without having to actually leave Teams. We're bringing Yammer to the team. We're bringing the broad audience to the team. And the team can also keep an eye out for important conversations, and if there's something they want to pull into the team to discuss, they can share it into the channel. Let's discuss. And that sort of brings that conversation into the core working group. And the core working group can sort of figure out what they need, how they're going to respond to this, and how, what the right course of action is. And they can sort of keep the sausage making to themselves and then come out and sell the sausage back on Yammer. So it's a great way to incorporate all of our tools to achieve a variety of scenarios that empower leaders to better engage with employees. Anything else you want to show?
Good.
All right. So what we've shown you is in the deck, and you'll have access to the slide deck, obviously. We've shown you the leadership community based heavily on Yammer to create an open space for people to engage, the live and on-demand events, the leadership blog, the digital presence for your leadership, and a way to coordinate response and to plan executive communications. All of this capability is available to you today in preview. Very, very important. We will be rolling it out to general availability worldwide beginning later on this year. But this is stuff you can go back and start working with today. And just to close with a couple of stories for this particular chapter, Grundfos is one of the world's biggest manufacturers of pumps. They have a wonderful story, and you can get the full story on customers.microsoft.com of a CEO who uses blogs on Yammer, just sort of does posts to keep people up to date. It may seem really odd because we all are familiar with social media and like people taking photos of their meals and stuff like that. Those kinds of mundane things mean a lot when your leadership shares what they're doing. Not necessarily taking photos of their meals, but sharing when they go to a customer site, sharing when they go to an industry event. What did they learn? Those kinds of day-to-day learnings and activities really help the organization feel connected with their leaders. So, should we move on to a modern employee communications, Naomi?
Absolutely. So, the exciting thing, I think, around modern employee communications is really about understanding that communications infrastructure you have inside of your organizations and how to help augment that channel that you may already be doing. So, there's lots of opportunity in the scope of what you can do with employee communications. And we're going to talk about a lot of examples here, but I want to stress that you should pick the ones that make sense for your organization and start, in small ways, right, to actually progress it over time, because there's a lot that you could do, there's a lot you should do, but there's a lot that you can do, and I want you to make sure that it's manageable as part of that. So when we think about modern employee communications, it's really about how we're helping to share news, to share updates across the organization, and even beyond the boundaries of our organization as well. So much of employee engagement these days is also about brand ambassadorship. It's about how do I help to recruit talent into my organization. If I have engaged employees, they're much more likely to refer other people into the company. So when we think about bringing in the great talent, who do you want to have working with you? People who are modeling some of the great behaviors inside of your organization. So when we think about that with employee communications, we actually want to make sure that some of the communications that we have are things that people can share externally as well. And that might be a little scary right at the front. And so sometimes people think about this and like, okay, don't I need to have a whole program to manage this? You know, do I need to manage what employees are saying on Twitter? Do I need to manage what they're saying on LinkedIn about our companies? How do we help to manage some of those channels as well? So I want to talk you through a few solutions that we have in Microsoft 365, both from an inside of the company and sort of how you're helping with news and events and helping to roll out updates there. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about how we can actually engage people externally to the company and use a lot of the employee engagement techniques to help you, again, with driving some of those business results that you need inside of your organization. Okay, let's go through a couple of demos and exciting pieces here too.
Yep, and while Naomi sets up the demo, this is where we were talking in the first section about empowering leaders to achieve. This is really about empowering communicators to achieve, to drive impact, to communicate at scale, to be to understand the effectiveness of their communications, to be as creative as possible, and to have very agile communication. And a big piece of this that Naomi was touching on is that we're not just talking about a Corp Comms lead or a Corp Comms communications team. We're talking about empowering all communicators in the organization to tell their stories, to send their updates, and to share very, very, very broadly.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let me switch to number 5, hopefully. Okay, oh, no, it's not over there. There it is. There we go, sorry. Okay, I'm going to start from the top here because we want to show a little bit about how you can build these things straight away inside of SharePoint. So in this case, I'm going to start building a communication site. Who has already built a communication site? I expect to see all of the hands. Oh, only half of the hands. Okay, all right. The rest of you, build your communication sites. Come on. No, it's all good. So we'll talk about communication sites. I want to show that there's a range here. First thing off with communication sites is we do have a couple of templates in there, both as a topic. You can see how that looks with sort of a large header across the top, and then you've got news items underneath. We also have a showcase, which is a great way to sort of think about very visual sites. So if you're having an event inside of your company, maybe you're having a conference, maybe you're doing a trip report back from Ignite and want to be able to share a lot of the content that you have. It's a great way to be able to do that and showcase a communication site as part of that. Now, when I create this communication site, I can do a couple of things here. So I'm going to create a topic because it's simple for us to talk about here. And I'm going to say this is news at Contoso. So I'm going to just call it news at Contoso. And this, again, could be for your specific community, for your department, for your organizational unit, everything there. I can get this site a description here if I want to, so general news, whatever it wants to be here. I can also apply a site classification policy. And this is important guidance in terms of who's going to have access to this content. So if it's something that you want to think about making a general purpose site versus actually applying specific internal classifications, you can do that as well. You can also set up usage guidelines for these site classifications. And it's important as you think about how you're communicating out and what's the audience that you're trying to reach as part of it. So I'm going to click Finish, and that site will beautifully generate for me right here, looking great. And so straight out of the box, I already have a great experience. And so I can actually look at the different ways to modify this to help fit for my organization's needs. So as I create this site here, I can actually go ahead, edit this. I can actually change out how this web part looks, for example, if I need to. So it makes it very simple for me to build what I need straight out of the box. I can actually change this out. I can change out these specific images here if I want to, and I can move these sections around as I need to. You see all of those commands here. I can change out this hero image. This is kind of one of my favorite things to be able to do here is actually change out the image. I can change out the links and make sure that it's actually something that I want to use. Now, I can even do things like web search. So this is a great way, again, in corporate communications, is one of the things we often suffer with is I need pictures, I need images, right, to be able to use as part of this. So here we have web search that's actually powered by Bing. And so, for example, if this was a conference report, I can actually go grab some of these Creative Commons images here, too. So, and that might be suitable for what you need on your intranet. And so I can showcase that. Obviously, make sure to be able to always fill in that alternative text. Accessibility is very important for people who are using screen readers, for example. And so being able to use that as part of as SharePoint here is built from the ground up for accessibility, too. So I can change that. I can modify these links. And hopefully you get the idea that I can basically customize this as much as I need to do. So the next piece I can do here is actually work on this news section. And one of the great pieces about having this communication site is it really helps me to showcase both events, the documents that I want, links to other things, and then being able to feature people as well. So right at the bottom here, I'm actually going to change this people section and actually say something around, employee of the month, right? And it could be my team of the month, it could be a customer case study, it's whatever I want to feature here. Excuse my typos. So I can do that. And I'm going to make sure that Dan is an amazing administrative assistant, apparently, and is going to be employee of the month here. And so it's a good way to be able to showcase the people who I want to recognize as part of that. And so, making that part of our communications is an important piece. So I have that. I can see that already I get the people card as part of this too. When I hover over these, I get that. I can change these sections around, do whatever I want. Okay, so that's my sort of customization of my page. So if I wanted to actually publish out this page, and obviously you do a little bit more work to make this look exactly how you want it, and so push that around here. So I can publish this page out. Then I'm going to add news. And news is really that great way to be able to post to SharePoint across any device that you're working with. So in this case, here I'm on my laptop. You can very easily post directly from your mobile phone as well. So if you download the new SharePoint mobile app, you'll actually see that you can easily post right from there as well. Makes it very simple for either executives on the road. You think about the different ways that you can use this. And we can say something like news up here, for example. I can very easily do that. And I can also edit, images in here too. I'm going to do that web search again, and I'm going to search for, in this case, I'm going to search for Dan. Why not? I think you'll find probably somebody. Well, I found Hawaii, so that'll do. It's probably good enough. So, oops, I forgot to click save. Sorry, my apologies. So, go here, search. Maybe he'll do Hawaii. Hawaii seems like a good idea today. We do Orlando, but we'll do this one. How's that? Let's click this one. We're going to use this image here. And you can see that I can change the focus of this image too. So I can actually say, where do I want this to be? Do I want emphasis on the palm trees or the sea, et cetera, et cetera. So very easy to make that happen. I can add my text in here, be able to add in some text straight from a document. So in this case, I'm going to grab my Word document that I have open over here, and I can put in some disclaimers, for example. If I can find my mouse again, there we get it. So I can put the mouse and actually paste that text in here. Or I would paste the text in here if I get a hold of it. Gosh, I can't see. I apologize, it's very hard to split between these two different screens. There we go. Let's try here. Let's do this again. Paste, hopefully, there it is. So it's bringing that content directly from Word and actually is retaining the formatting as part of it too. So once I've done that, I can actually build out my columns if I want to. I can put in documents, I can put in extra news, additional images, all of the things that I want to do here. So I can actually grab some of the images from our site and reuse it very easily in here too. So hopefully you can see that you can build out a news article very simply as part of that. I can also add in those Yammer conversations too. So if I actually want to concentrate the news post in this case on a specific type of conversation, I can very easily do that too. And I can use additional content, for example, like Twitter as well, just to be able to show all of those areas too. So in this case, here's the Twitter feed coming in, and I can actually bring in all of that information on this same news post. Once I'm happy with my news post, I can go ahead and publish this. So when I do this here, you can see that I get some options when I visit this page. And so that's a great way to be able to showcase a little bit about what I can do with this. Now, once I've created this news post, I obviously want to distribute it to everybody. And so I can pick out here, I can actually send this to a distribution list, an Active Directory security group, or I can send it to specific individuals as well. So I can pick out people in my organization, for example. Hey, Dan, you're featured as an employee of the month on here, and here's a little snippet. And that thumbnail and this little preview of the text get automatically generated, and you can send that out through email as well. I can also promote this news article. So look that I have a whole range of options here as well. So if I think this news article is really important, I can go ahead and add this page to the navigation, and you'll see it appear up here on the top. And then I can also do a couple other things here where I can copy this address and perhaps post it to Yammer if that's what I want to do. I can email it out. But I can also save this page design. So if I want to actually create news items in the future, I'm very easily able to do that as well. So I can put all that information there, and then I can keep posting that news over time. So I can post this back, for example, into a group in the executive corner group. Why not? We'll put it in there. And I can post that preview of the news article there, and then people can have conversations about it as well. So it's a great way to be able to showcase all of that together. So showing of those things, there's a couple of different things on organizational news and how you actually use that inside of your company. Now, this is a great way to think about, how I'm taking that format and making it into something that's really usable. But what else if I want to do that's more than news? So perhaps I might want to create, for example, an executive summary of a document, or maybe I want to create a newsletter as well. Now, oftentimes we spend a lot of times crafting information, for example, inside of Word or inside of PowerPoint. And so here I have, a very boring document, right? Oftentimes I use things around, safety training or something else that people might not generally want to look at. So I have a long Word document here. When you send this to people, it's got 12 pages in it. They're going to say, hey, I don't really want to actually, read this information, right? It doesn't seem like it's very accessible or very easy to be able to use. So I'm going to go ahead and use another technology that we have inside of Microsoft Office here called Sway. And Sway allows me to actually create new documents or newsletters directly from what we're doing inside of that Word document. So I can actually create this document. I can say create a Sway from a specific document. And I'm going to go ahead and say, open this one. And it will actually open up the document inside of Sway. Now, it's going to do some amazing transformations. It's going to grab all of the images that I had inside of that Word document, and it's actually going to generate a Sway for me. And one of the great benefits of using Sway here is, as a great complement to what you're doing with SharePoint News, is it automatically generates these pages which are beautiful on a mobile experience. And I can very easily add additional content in here as well. So I'm sort of making this an experience. So you can see it took that very boring Word document and turned it into a very beautiful Sway that's much, much easier to be able to look at. And so hopefully you see that it's a simple thing to be able to take that information and make it useful to a lot of people. So let me check out a couple of different things here. I can actually check out the design here and change this styling. I can change out how I want this to look. So if I want different looks and feels, etc., I can actually do that. I can change how people actually interact with the page. Do I want this in slides or horizontal? This is really easy for when you're presenting on the go and you want people to just be able to access this with a mobile device. Don't have to download PowerPoint. You don't have to open PowerPoint online, any of those things either. It's an easy way just to be able to explain that same newsletter and get access to it wherever you are. I can also change out this storyline. So for example, if I wanted to augment my internal content with some external content, I can very easily do that. So I can add a card in here, and you'll see it looks very similar to how we think about web parts inside of SharePoint. So I can actually see some suggested things here, and maybe I want to add in a YouTube video maybe that's relevant here. You can see that Sway has actually automatically parsed the content that came from my Word newsletter. So I see stakeholders, I see a quarterly executive summary. It's actually trying to help me to find things that are useful to me. So in this case, maybe I'm going to find Satya Nadella, for example. Easy to find some videos on him, and actually, putting all of this information in here too. So I can actually go ahead and add that little clip, and this again is very helpful. Sometimes you get fun clips that you want to include from YouTube. Maybe you want to include some customer reactions, etc. And you can put all of that information in here as well, and then have that just be part of what you're doing in that Sway newsletter. So when I go to play this newsletter now, you'll see that it obviously changed the format to the way I want it. I can actually scroll down. I'll see all this information here, and then here's my little video that came in from Satya from CNBC. So I can incorporate tweets, I can incorporate YouTube, I can incorporate a large range of external information to make this really helpful in the way that I'm helping to communicate. I can then, of course, take one more step and say, hey, I want to include that live event that Dan talked about earlier. So if I go over to the executive corner group, I could go find my live event that was there earlier. So here it is. Here's the quadcopter live event. And I'm just going to grab that video from Stream. So I'm going to click and wait for this to open. Oops, sorry, I need to sign in here. So, which will happen as soon as I can. Go ahead, please. Can't tell if it's actually clicking. Sorry, I'm doing it on one screen and looking at another so at the same time. Okay, I can grab a video from Stream. Let me do that. So let me go over to SharePoint here, actually to Stream here. And where is my Stream? There it is. So I'm going to go find Stream over here, grab that video. So there's Miriam. I need to log in as her. grab my same video and include it into that Sway presentation as well. So I'm going to find some content here. So in this case, we'll grab this one, Contoso's company strategy. I'm going to grab that embed code right from here. So I'm going to say share this here. I'm going to grab the embed code. Here it is. I'm going to copy this. And then I can actually put this directly into a Sway as well. So here's my media, and I can put in that embed, and it'll actually showcase the stream video in here as well. So I'm going to press play there. It looks good. And you'll see it'll load up here, and then I can click play, and then that video will appear as well. So all of that information could be in one place, right? I've brought in both external media and internal media all in one place, and I've created a newsletter. Now, the wonderful thing about this is, in addition to the SharePoint news, which I could use to maybe announce this newsletter, I could take this newsletter and have multiple people author it at the same time. So Dan could be editing this in real time and could also be able to very easily incorporate any of this information too. So when we think about maybe telling a story inside of our organization, think about the different ways that we want to transmit newsletters, because it's a very common mechanism for us to think about with employee communications, then using this kind of technology in conjunction with what you do with Yammer and SharePoint is really important too. Okay, we'll walk through a couple of other examples too that we have on the slide.
If you, can you switch to 7?
Yeah, 7.
So we've seen examples of using SharePoint, communication sites and news, and as well as Sway as two options for telling stories in a modern way across the organization. And as Naomi mentioned, if you choose to go with Sway as your creative tool, you still can post that into SharePoint as news. Let's talk about how you would actually do that. I'm going to go to the News at Contoso site. So this is another communication site. Obviously, this one was built in advance, so it's got more content, and it's highlighting news from across the organization in several different categories. We announced this week that you can now create a news link in SharePoint News. And that news link can be anything. It can be an internal link. It can be an external link. And so if I choose news link, I then have the option of pasting in whatever link I need to. So it could be the link to that Sway that Naomi just created. It could be a link to an article in a Wall Street Journal. And that news will then be distributed using the same news syndication engine that all SharePoint News has, which means it will surface to people on SharePoint Home, in SharePoint Mobile, and in anywhere else that you've put a news web part. So here we're seeing SharePoint Home. And SharePoint Home is bringing together all the news that's appropriate for me from across my teams and from the organization, and it's making the feed intelligent with AI. AI is recommending articles that are appropriate for me based on who I am, my roles, what's called my audiences, my teams and groups that I belong to, my work patterns and affiliations. All of those things inform the news feed, so that I get the opportunity to focus on the news that matters most to me. In addition, we'll notice that the article on the far right is highlighted. That's because we now have the ability to implement what's called organizational news, where any site in your organization, such as the news site we were just on, whoops, sorry, just clicked out of that by accident, such as this news site, can be designated as a source of organizational news. And then posts to that site are visually badged as organizational news, as we're seeing here on this page. And that, again, is just another way of drawing people's attention to the right news. And this looks great on mobile as well. So the SharePoint mobile application will show the same feed of news and will allow users to engage with that news, to like, to comment, to save news for later if they want to come back and read it later. And finally, take advantage of mobile notifications. So users with the SharePoint mobile application will be notified when a new article appears that's relevant to them. So all of these things put together are the pieces of modern employee communications. We've seen new ways to keep your team's audience and organization informed with SharePoint News, new ways to create compelling communications with tools like Sway and SharePoint News that each allow you to bring in rich content from inside and outside Office 365, including, we saw video, live data, and other content. And these kinds of tools can be used to light up some great scenarios. And these are the kind of scenarios that I encourage you to talk to your organizations about how you can modernize. Crisis and change management. How do you connect people in the time of crisis? We have some wonderful stories of how organizations came together in very difficult situations, whether it was to respond to a hurricane or an earthquake, or to move forward through a significant PR challenge. Engaging employees to get their feedback and opinions through tools like Microsoft Forms, which is a quick way to create polls and surveys. And then again, using Microsoft Teams for the team that's actually planning the communication, just as we saw in the previous section of the presentation, using Microsoft Teams and then tapping into those external audiences with Yammer. So these tools can be exceptionally powerful. Mondelez is one of the biggest producers of consumer products in the world, and they use these technologies to engage a very, very distributed global workforce, many of whom don't ever sit down at a desk. They're out in their mobile devices, and these kinds of tools are used to drive communication, again, not just top-down, but across the organization, empowering all communicators to share important information and knowledge. The next section of our exploration of employee engagement is fostering open sharing, learning, and innovation. And for me, this is one of the most absolutely transformative elements of employee engagement. This is about not just connecting leaders to the organization or communicators to the organization, but connecting everyone and empowering all employees to share best practices, knowledge, experience, to ask questions and get questions answered, and to drive peer-to-peer learning initiatives across the organization, as well as to gather feedback and generate ideas. So we have a bunch of case studies up there. There's a great quote here from NGA, but check out customers.microsoft.com for more. And so here, we're empowering employees, and we're empowering them to share knowledge, expertise, to learn, to crowdsource and brainstorm. Sometimes the best ideas come from the least expected locations. And when you engage employees, especially those employees that are closest to your product and closest to your customers, you can surface some amazing ideas in your organization. And then innovation, bringing people together around a specific goal to say, what can we do to fix this, to improve this, to drive better quality, to drive down costs? And I'll point to a specific customer, Sanofi Pasteur, who has used Yammer specifically to drive engagement around process improvement and have saved millions and millions of dollars doing that. So let's talk briefly about some of the technologies that can be used for that. We've already seen Yammer in use, and so we've talked about using Yammer to bring people together to talk openly. And actually, let me go to this community. Jump in there first. So this particular Yammer community is designed to allow retail employees to come together and share and engage directly with each other. So they can share resources, they can ask for feedback, as you're seeing. We can use praise to recognize good work. We can post announcements. And all of these things create a sense of community for this particular scope of our organization. Now, one of the great things about Yammer that is unique in the suite is that the discussions that are happening in this group are public by default. Unlike every other tool in Microsoft Suite, you don't have to belong to this community to see the conversation. So if there's a really interesting conversation happening about a new idea and it's generating a lot of energy, that could actually show up to the leadership in their Yammer experience, because intelligence can suggest that as a potentially interesting experience. That's one of the key differentiators about that enables Yammer to really support these kinds of experiences very, very well. It's open by default. Also, the way the conversational model and the UI is designed makes it ideal for coming back to knowledge later. In other chat modalities, my inbox, I mean, my friends can vouch for this. There's thousands of unread messages. It goes down, and I'll never find it again. My other chat modalities are great when I'm trying to get something done right now, but I don't ever go back and look at what we talked about 6 months ago. One of the unique things about Yammer is that each post is really designed to support the possibility that the knowledge contained in that conversation is going to be useful weeks, months, or even years down the road. So it's the half-life of information in Yammer is much, much longer. One of the ways that surfaces is that every Yammer post has a link to it. So among other things, if there's a particularly interesting conversation that I see, I can share that with you. I can send it to the leadership and say, hey, this is something you should jump in and look at. And that's unique to that particular tool. Finally, Yammer also allows us to pull in people who aren't part of the group on a day-to-day basis. You don't have to follow a Yammer group in order, you don't have to join it in order to be part of the conversation. We can be having a conversation and as a community, and I might know Mark has some particular expertise in that space. I can @mention Mark even if he's never seen this community, and he'll get a notification that he's been @mentioned and can come in and contribute his expertise. So that's another unique piece about Yammer. So Yammer is super well suited for supporting these kinds of community conversations that span organizational boundaries, that are meant to last for a potentially longer period of time because you're collecting knowledge that then can be reused for later initiatives. And this, and Amy also pointed out that we can even do a poll. So thanks for doing that demo along the way. And then this conversation can be brought into a SharePoint communication site to create a very unique curated experience. And this isn't the right one. Let me go to the newer one here. So when you bring content and conversation together, you can make an even more powerful digital employee experience. So this is a SharePoint communication site supporting that same scenario, allowing retail employees to connect, to find answers and content. But now we're using both SharePoint and Yammer to achieve that goal. So the site has a mix of curated content. I can see sort of key information at the top. I can see experts that I can reach out to. And it also has dynamic and spontaneous content. So here, there's a set of trending resources that is personalized to me with intelligence based on Microsoft Graph. So I can see the resources that are potentially most useful to me in that community. And then I can connect with experts and peers through Yammer. And I don't even have to leave Yammer because we've brought in that same Yammer Conversations web part to the site. So we've, again, gone from a simple, takes 2 seconds to create experience in Yammer of creating a community to something that took 5 minutes to create by putting together a SharePoint site that brought both the content and the community together. So these are very, very, very powerful tools. I hope you're able to start envisioning some of the things you might do with them. Do you want to
do you want to do one more demo of Stream, maybe?
Sure.
That'd be good. So let me just, I can't remember where you were now. Sorry. Stream, can I go here? How's that? So let's talk about Stream as well in this context, because it's another way of really doing powerful communications here too. So apologize, I'm on Dan's machine and I've
last tab there.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, it's packed on the wrong thing there. It's strange. So I can actually search for Stream.
The last tab.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, there you go.
It is there? I was just going to search for it here. So I can actually create content directly in here in Stream as well. So as we mentioned earlier, we have a new Stream mobile application coming out very soon as well. And I can upload a video right from here. I can actually create my own files as well. So I can actually record something directly in PowerPoint. I don't know if you have the Stream add-in connected on here, but you can actually connect it. Okay, so you can actually connect it directly in here and put that inside of that content. Once I've uploaded that content, I can reuse that content lots of different places across my company as well. So I can go ahead and check out the different ways to create that content. I can also use a live events capability in here as well. So if you're actually producing live events, you can produce them also directly inside of Stream and use that with an encoded option so that it makes it really easy for me to use a high production quality event as well. So that shows you a little bit about what we can do with Stream. I can also discover some of the content that's going on inside of my organization. So in this case, you'll see here, there's a whole bunch of other information as part of that too. You can see I get some analytics on this particular content. So in this case, this popular one around this quadcopter, you can see here we've got 11 views as part of that. And you'll see all of that same Yammer conversation happening here. So regardless of where I create my community and where I create my content, so if I start with a video and then afterwards I need to incorporate my community, or if I start with a community and afterwards want to create content and put video in there or reuse it from somewhere else, I can do those things over and over, whichever way round I want to start as a company. So I can also do things like searching that transcript directly in here as well and have it scroll if I want to when the video is playing. And then we can do things like being able to see the different people who are involved here as well. So in these different examples, it's an easy way to be able to scan through the content and very quickly see who has been talking through the video. It's very helpful in that way to be able to scan through, because sometimes you don't remember exactly the words that people were actually mentioning. So I could look through the entire transcript, or I can actually through who's actually talking as part of stream. So this facial detection happens automatically. And so I can actually go to, here's my crowd shot, for example, right? And one of our individuals here who got picked out. So I can go directly to that speaker. And so even if I don't remember the words they were saying, I can find that person very easily, and makes it easy for me to be able to use that content again in my community. So very simple way to think about how you can help to organize that content, to use both the Yammer conversations that you might have, and then I can also organize this into channels as well. So very easily be able to create channels. So in this case, I could have one for Q&A sessions for organizers, for leaders. I can have all of that information right there, but I can also create, channels myself for my own community. So if it's things like, you have a community on machine learning, or what you learned about Power BI at Ignite or SharePoint or whatever it is, you can actually create that same channel inside of Yammer, inside of Stream as well, and then connect in Yammer conversations as you need to, as you go. So hopefully that gives you just like a little taste of what we do in terms of what we can do with Stream and Yammer together and help with that.
Yeah, and Stream is a really powerful way to communicate in the modern workplace for sure. We saw it in helping leaders engage through live events. We talked about it in communications as a way of informing people. But in this kind of setting, when we're talking about open sharing, learning, and innovation, video is something that much of today's workforce is exceptionally comfortable with. If you think about 20 years ago when I was starting my career, most leaders, most anyone would not want to step in front of a video camera. It's like, oh my God, no, don't turn on the video camera. Now, people are brushing their teeth and taking videos. And interestingly, at the same point, documents have become more cumbersome. People are less comfortable spending time in long-form, structured formats like a Word document or PowerPoint presentation. And so video is so easy to create. Anyone can create one on their phone. So easy to upload. And then to be able to distribute knowledge and communication through video is exceptionally powerful, because it captures all the nuances of human communication. You get the body language, you get the voice, you get the intention. And in many ways, it's more accessible as well, because people who might not speak English as a first language in my organization might feel more comfortable talking than they would trying to write well. So it's actually a very inclusive way of communicating as well. So video, I'm a huge fan of video, and Stream does phenomenal things to help us capture knowledge and distribute it with video in the modern workplace. Again, some great customer case studies. Just in the interest of time, we will sort of breeze through these here. But the key point is, this is not just about soft, squishy, touchy-feely human stuff. Open learning, sharing, knowledge, and innovation drives actual business results. YPro's case study is a good example about that. They see themselves becoming more competitive by using these approaches. One of the world's biggest advertising agencies as well, Dentsu, doing the same thing, connecting the workforce to work better for clients, to improve customer service. Again, Grundfos, top to bottom, front to back, sharing and driving innovation. So the last category of employee engagement that we're going to address is participation and inclusion. And this is about delivering a modern employee experience that really fosters connectedness and contribution. And this quote from TDS I just love, because it's so true. Younger generations entering the workforce today really, truly want a modern, inclusive organization. They want to feel connected. We had another customer, KFC, Australia, who joined us at the Employee Engagement Summit back in March and shared how they are connecting tens of thousands of employees, most of whom are under 25 years old. And one of the first things that those employees care about is feeling part of something bigger. They want to feel connected. People want to feel included. And it's not just about recruiting and retaining better employees. It's about getting more out of them. Because when people feel included, they contribute more. And when you can incorporate diverse perspectives and experience, you can drive better results. So there's one specific story that I want to tell that is very personal to us at Microsoft. Less than a month ago, Sasha posted this post to Yammer. Sasha was letting the organization know, letting her team know that she was going through a gender transition and that she wanted to let everyone know what she was about to go through in this very significant change in her life. And while she was sharing that with everyone, she was also making sure that she was being respectful of any potential discomfort that anyone else on the team might feel, and saying, hey, let's make this an open conversation. Here's how you can address me. Don't feel bad if you slip up. I'll correct you nicely. And here's how we can get through all this together. This post went up, and within about an hour, there were 38 replies from other people in the organization saying, this is great, good luck, best wishes on the transition. Our chief diversity officer, one of our senior executives, pitched in and cheered her on. And it was a really phenomenal way to see the power of these social technologies to really drive home a message that Microsoft is an inclusive organization. Then that goes beyond just being diverse. It means being truly inclusive and embracing that diversity and getting more results out of it. So in this case, we first talked about empowering leaders, then communicators, then employees. This is really about empowering the organization. This is one of the most transformative outcomes of employee engagement, because when you give everyone a voice and you involve them and you connect them, you're able to get more out of them. You're able to attract better employees, you're able to retain them longer, and you're able to drive actual measurable business results from that. So in this case, I will, do you want to do a demo here?
Time?
Yeah, I'm a little afraid out of time. Yeah, we'll talk to some of the examples here, just because we're down to 9 minutes. First, interest in affiliation spaces. This is something we do a lot of at Microsoft, where both on Yammer and with SharePoint, we create communities that are based on interests and affiliations. So that could be everything from Women at Microsoft, which is one of our more active communities, to one of our most active SharePoint sites, which is Dog Walkers in Redmond. Interestingly, there are so many people who have dogs at Microsoft, in Redmond particularly, that this community is where they go to share the latest information about new dog parks, new trails, but the policies about which buildings you can bring dogs into and which ones you can't. And those kinds of things seem silly, but they are exceptionally powerful. One of the other stories I love to tell here is another one of our more busy communities is called Curmudgeonville. And Curmudgeonville, I know, right? Mark, you should have founded it. Curmudgeonville is where people go to complain. It literally is an open Yammer community where people can go and moan and gripe. And the cool thing about it is, when they moan and gripe to each other, they actually feel better afterwards.
Right.
It's a problem that takes care of itself. And great ideas come out of it as well. And I'm being a little, I'm giving you some funny examples here, but these interest and affiliation spaces are what really drives a sense of belonging and a sense of connectedness.
And this can also be a great technique to help companies come together for the first time. If this is something where perhaps using the idea of a community in your company might be a scary thought, depending on the type of organization you are, oftentimes things like being able to do charitable giving together, doing things like fitness campaigns together, those are oftentimes ways to bring people together. If there's something that you want to experiment with a social technology, but maybe you don't have a leader that's quite committed yet, it's one way to actually bring that conversation together and to bring people together in a different way. Oftentimes when we connect through a shared interest, it helps us to feel, again, more aligned and closer with colleagues that maybe we would work with, or maybe people you just haven't met at all before inside of the organization. And so when we think about these interest and affiliation spaces, it can also be used for external conversations as well. So oftentimes we have inside of customers, they have brand ambassadors, for example. So people who are retweeting a lot of content maybe to their followers, sharing company news out to Facebook. Consider having a community internally for people who want to do that. And so they can have some discussions, see what kind of feedback they're getting, and it helps you to actually adjust your corporate communications because of that. And so that merging between what you do internally and externally in terms of being able to reach and connect people inside of the organization helps with that feeling of inclusiveness as well.
Yep. The second broad category here is enabling open communication. So this is almost like the most traditional enterprise social example, where you just want to empower people to share what they're going through, to share their updates and ideas, to share their personal milestones. Those kinds of things, again, foster a sense of belonging and connectedness. And the last category is more intentional. This is about the organization really working to drive a better employee experience by, for example, using praise to recognize contributions and achievements, or conducting intentional campaigns that generate a sense of fun or community. KFC Australia, again, shared their story of Fun Fridays, which they implemented across all their restaurants in Australia, which was basically the idea that do something fun in your restaurant. And they shared ideas about how to do that across all the different restaurants. It actually drove up customer satisfaction measurably at their organization. Another example was a safety program that was done in the same method as a real campaign, where they improved their safety reporting by 28%. And as you can imagine, in a restaurant where you've got a lot of customers and a lot of young employees, safety really matters. And to get that kind of improvement by connecting people is really hits the bottom line, so to speak. Mm-hmm. All right, so a couple of last stories here, again from TDS. The one I love is the last line here. It helped with retention. That is a measurable business result. It's something you can sell to HR. And here's another example also from TDS about how they put all these pieces together. They're one of our hero customer stories on customers.microsoft.com, because they put all these pieces together to drive employee engagement across leadership engagement scenarios, modern communications scenarios, open learning, sharing, and innovation scenarios, as well as interest groups. And one of the most heartwarming stories here is they created what you might call an affiliation group for veterans working at TDS. And again, the stories that came out of that and the sense of recognition and validation and personal value to the organization was really phenomenal. So with that brings us to a quick wrap-up. Employee engagement involves all employees. It starts with leaders and connecting them so they can share the vision of the organization and align people towards common goals and objectives. Communicating on an ongoing basis, not just from the top down, but from the bottom up and side to side, enabling all communicators to use modern tools to create and share and distribute and engage with and measure the results of communications. Driving open learning and sharing, bringing people together to share best practices and knowledge and ideas and experience. And last but not least, creating a culture that is participatory, where people want to share and contribute their very best, bring their best selves to the organization, and become the best that they can be for the organization. So with that, we'd like to say thank you for coming. I know we got a huge room here, so I know it's a little tough to do Q&A. If you have questions, feel free to come up. It'll probably be easier than having everyone come to the 4 mics at the front. And thank you very much for coming. Enjoy the rest of Microsoft Ignite.